Hi, I'm Lexi and I'm going to go over problem 1 from the Unit 1-2 test. This question was asking for me to state the domain and range and circle whether it is a function or a relation. The vertical line test is when you draw a vertical line anywhere on your graph, and if the line hits more than one point at a time, it is a relation. If it only ever hits one point, it is a function. So we can clearly see on this graph, if I draw a line, it is going to hit 2 points. The first at -2, 2, and the other at -2, -2, which is going to make it a relation. Next, we are going to look at the domain. When we look at domain, it means we state the boundaries of the relation from left to right. The first thing we do is open up a curly bracket, and then state x equals all real numbers, which are the three symbols that we use at the beginning of each time we state the domain and range. Then we do a slash and proceed to write our boundaries. We first look to the very left of the relation and see what the farthest point on the x-axis is. In this case, it is -5. Then, we need our greater than or equal to symbol so we can understand that x can't be anything lower than -5. Then, we write the greater than or equal to sign again in the same direction and look at what the farthest right boundary is. For this question, it is -1. So then we write that in after the symbol and close the domain off with another curly bracket. When we wrote the greater than or equal to sign, you would actually read it as less than or equal to because the open part of the sign is facing the right boundary, meanwhile when we wrote it in the first time it was facing x. And we would read this domain by saying x equals all real numbers and -5 is greater than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to -1. Then we go on to write the range. For range, instead of writing the boundaries from left to right, we would write them from the bottom to the top. To write the range, we once again open up a curly bracket, and then we write y equals all real numbers, which are the three symbols following the curly bracket. The reason why we wrote the y instead of an x like we did in the domain is because now we are referring to the y-axis when stating the range. Now, we add a slash to continue stating the boundaries. We look at what the farthest point is that the relation goes to on the y-axis. For this question, it is -4, so we write that in. We then follow -4 with another greater than or equal to symbol. After that, we write a y. Again, the reason why we write a y instead of an x like we did in the previous domain is because we are looking at the y-axis, not the x-axis. Once we have written the y, we can then go and write the greater than or equal to symbol and follow it with the top boundary on the y-axis, which is 4. And then we can close the domain off with once again another curly bracket. Now that I have explained to you how to do this question, the question is, where did I go wrong? Alright, for this part of the question, I circled relation, so I got points from that, and I started strong. Then, you could clearly see I was starting to get confused with how to read the graph. I initially thought that the endpoints of the graph were arrows, so there wasn't going to be any left boundary for the domain. In the range, since I thought the graph was continuously growing, I closed my bracket off after y equals all real numbers. I now know that this is clearly wrong, and you can also see my pencil marks of corrections once I receive my test back. Let's take a look at a similar question. For this question, it's asking us to state just the domain and range. Alright, for the first part of this question, I just opened up a curly bracket for a domain and then did my three symbols of x equals all real numbers and then a slash. This question is a little different because instead of endpoints there are arrows, which means that we won't be able to identify the right boundary for our domain. But we continue to write the domain after the slash by writing an x. Then we do the less than or equal to sign because we know that x is representing all the values less than our left boundary, which is 1. We then close off the domain using a curly bracket once again. Now range is a little different. Although we do normally state our up and down boundaries, for this question, because there are no endpoints and there are actually only arrows, we cannot do anything more than stating y equals all real numbers, so we actually just end off our range there with another curly bracket. Okay, that's it. Thank you for watching my video tutorial.